G'day everyone, Liam O'Brien here back on the Inner Sanctums YouTube channel. Today, as always, I'm going to be back here talking a bit more about boxing, specifically Zhu Mendoza. Today officially marks the start of fight week for what's one of the bigger fights that Australia is going to see for this calendar year. When Brian Mendoza, the WBC interim super welterweight champion, comes over to Australia to fight the newly minted WBO full world champion in Tim Tszyu. Of course, Tim was interim champion. Now been elevated after Jermell Charlo was officially stripped of the title by the organisation just last week when he fought Canelo Alvarez to a pretty lacklustre decision loss. So we've got a huge fight in Australia. Let's not beat around the bush here. This is massive. But rather than looking at the X's and O's, of the fight, rather than looking at what each guy has to do to win, rather than looking at the grand narratives of things and all that sort of stuff, I really wanted to harp on about this fight in terms of matchmaking. And this is a big tick for the sport of boxing, because it's very rare that you get number one versus number two in any weight class. It's very, very rare, At the moment, we're currently exhausted by the whole Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk debacle, because we just want to see number one versus number two. And for whatever reason, we're not getting it. Same goes in the light heavyweight division. We've got a Beterbiev. He's about to fight Callum Smith. Great fight, don't get me wrong, great fight. Beterbiev should win. But, we're all salivating because we want to see him fight Dimitri Bivol. That's the fight. For me personally, that's the number one fight in boxing that I want to see now. Now Spence and Crawford have happened. There's another example though. For years we waited for that fight to happen, and finally it happened this year. Very rare do we get number one versus number two. Now, obviously there's a big asterisk there because we don't know what's going on with Jermell Charlo. He says he wants to come back to 154, but after going up to 168 pounds, that's a massive jump. Will he come back down and make that weight? Time will tell. But to me, looking at this division now, we do finally have one versus two. A little bit of an asterisk because we don't know what's going on, but either way, finally it was made straight away. We didn't have to beat around the bush. We didn't have to have months upon months of media beat up, media talk about will the fight happen? Oh, it's been announced. Oh, it's contracts are in talks. Yada yada yada. We are blessed to have two fighters who have decided, you've got an interim title, I've got an interim title, mine's just become full title, let's fight. We're the two best in the division now, we're going to do it. It's as simple as that, we haven't been caught up in the whole money talks drama of, who gets this much gate, who gets that much, what's the purse going to be, are we going to have to go to purse bids, who's going to promote it, who's going to get the split. It was just two guys. I'm sure all that stuff happened behind the scenes, but for the most part, what we see in public has just been two guys that have decided, may the best man win. We're the two best in the division. And boxing, through the political landscape, said, "Yep, cool, it's done." We didn't get a case of Tim Tszyu becoming champion. All of a sudden, he had a mandatory against someone like Brian Castagna, who used to hold the title and hasn't fought since he fought Jermell Charlo himself. So we actually got common sense matchmaking and common sense from the political bodies behind the sport. And as boxing fans, we should be so thankful for that. We also got two very active fighters who have decided, forget the records, forget the talk. We could be holding out and going for the biggest purse, whatever. We're going for glory. And it's really a throwback to an old era where the title was the number one prerogative. Obviously, money has been a massive thing in terms of boxing all the way back to the sport's infancy. When record gates were coming in, guys were fighting for paydays. It is prize fighting. But outside of the monetary prize, there is that physical prize of the title and of that sort of that legacy that the guys want to solidify, And if we sort of have a look at their journeys to this fight, both guys have fought former champions. They've fought guys who have long storied histories in this sport. If we look at Tim Tim to start with. You know, he got this title by beating Tony Harrison. Tony Harrison's the one. Well, before Canelo, obviously, a couple of last week, but he was the one guy in the division that beat Jermell Charlo, and was probably beating him in the second fight as well before Charlo found another gear and knocked him out. You know, and Tim battered him. Tim really walked him down towards the end of that fight and battered him and won the title. He fought Carlos Ocampo, who fought Sebastian Fundora for a WBC interim title, the title that Brian Mendoza currently holds. You know, he also fought Dennis Hogan on the Australian scene. Dennis Hogan was not long removed from a challenge for the WBO world title, the one that Jaime Munguia held in Mexico. And then he went up to middleweight and he fought Jermall Charlo for his middleweight title, you know. So he's fought highly credentialed guys all the way through, and the beauty of the way that No Limit Boxing, the promoter, have match-made him is that they've given him incremental step-ups every single time. All unique styles, all different fighters. You know, after the Hogan fight, he went to what was meant to be Michael Zarafa. You know, Michael Zarafa's a completely different fighter to Hogan. And Michael Zarafa's a completely different fighter to Takeshi Inoue, who Tim fought in November of that year as well, you know. So they've done a great job in terms of, you know, matching him up through the rankings to take on these opponents and ultimately get him to this position where he's fighting Mendoza. And Mendoza's very similar, you know. One of my favourite finishes of last year was when he rallied in the 5th round to knock out Jason Rosario. Jason Rosario, of course, is a former belt holder at 154. You know, Mendoza come in and knocked him out with a picture perfect uppercut at the Minnesota Armory, one of the best venues in boxing. So, yeah, and then he, of course, took on the boogeyman of the division, Sebastian Fundora, and took his WBC interim title. You know, so what we're seeing is two guys who are willing to fight anyone, anytime. Obviously, Tim's got that big fish out there. He really wants a Jermell Charlo fight. And can we really blame him? You know, Tim's been mandatory for the WBO since he beat Jeff Horn. You know, I remember the graphic popped up, you know, that he's in line to fight Patrick Teixeira. That was back when Patrick Teixeira had the title. Of course, Teixeira lost the title to Brian Castano. Brian Castano ultimately lost it in the rematch to Jermell Charlo. So, you know, Tim's been waiting for this position and waiting for this opportunity. And now he's finally going to grab it. He's not going to let anyone or anything step in his way. You know, he's not going to let politics, he's not going to let money, he's not going to let revenue splits, he's not going to let promotional deals, all that sort of stuff get in his way. You know, he's ready to take on this opportunity. You know, he sees this as the last big fight before he gets Jermell Charlo or he gets another big fish in Las Vegas. You know, I saw on his social media that it was farewell to Australia. This was going to be his final stopping point before he makes it permanent in the US. And you know, he can't be blamed for that. It's been a great run that he's been on in Australia, and I've certainly enjoyed the hell out of watching it. I've certainly enjoyed the hell out of watching it. You know, from the time that he had his second fight on the way down on the undercard of the Danny Green Anthony Mundine 3 fight card in Adelaide. You know, so you know, it's been beautiful to watch. And for Mendoza, you know, he's come over here. I saw in the media today. He said, you know, Tim doesn't have as many one-punch knockouts as I do, which is true. It's true. Tim wears his opponents down. He downloads information early, much like his father did, and he constantly wears at his opponents. You know, the way he broke down Tony Harrison to eventually get the finish, and ultimately, you know, it actually wasn't Tim's prettiest finish that he's had. But Tim had him right where he wanted him, and he battered him. He comprehensively battered him. You know, but Mendoza, you know, saying he doesn't have as many one-punch knockouts as I do, that's true. And Brian Mendoza is a guy who can cataclysmically thump. You know, he throws hard shots, and he sets them up perfectly, angles, technique, everything in between. You know, he really hits hard, but he hits smart. He really hits with a solid technique behind him. So yeah, Mendoza's a live dog in this fight, and he's come out to Australia confidently. He hasn't trash talked. Even when he said, you know, Tim doesn't have as many one punch knockouts as me, he's basically saying that in the sense that he's a different style of fighter. And we're going to see two styles clash. You know, both guys are hungry for finishes. Both guys break their opponents down, but they do it in different fashion. You know, Mendoza through thumping hard and waiting for his openings. Tim Tszyu through applying a lot of pressure and breaking down his opponents. So, you know, I think we're going to see fireworks on Sunday. I really, really do. It's a great event up on the Gold Coast. It's a great undercard. And you know, we're going to find a lot about this 154-pound division out on Sunday. We're going to see who's either got next or who's king. You know, it's really a fight between two of the biggest players in the division. You know, for us Australians, we're hoping that it's Tim's coming out party. For Mendoza, he's hoping to shock the world and prove that despite the fact that he's done it the hard way, he is the best in the division, and he's next for Jermell Charlo. You know, what can we ask? We can't ask for anything else as boxing fans. Charlo's out of the division. We get the next best two to find out who either is the man or who's got next. Common sense, logical boxing at its best, and I can't wait to watch. Now, before you get out of here, please be sure to like, subscribe. If you like what we're doing at the channel, if you like what I'm doing in terms of my boxing coverage, please be sure to leave a comment. Let us know what you think. And yeah, have a great day, sports fans. Enjoy the fights.